I've grown up in the same house ever since birth. My childhood was like every other. On my 5th birthday, the night I was getting tucked in for bed, my parents strictly told me to never leave my room after 3 a.m. I never really woke up in the middle of the night, so I had no problem with it, and simply thought it was normal. A couple years later, when I was 13, I randomly started thinking about it and decided to ask my parents about it. My parents were smiling and having fun making lunch, but as I asked, "Why can't I leave my room after 3 a.m.?" their faces turned pale and straight-faced. They then got nervous and simply said, "Don't worry about it, you're too young." I didn't want to be a brat, so I turned around and went back to my room. That night, I had woken up to a loud crash in the living room. My parents had gone to see my grandparents, and I guess they stayed the night too. I had a dry throat, and I thought they were only telling me not to leave my room after 3 a.m. because it was late and they didn't want to wake me up. Maybe it's a cat, I said to myself. God, was I wrong. I shook as I heard large footsteps in the living room, walking around, but I thought it could have been my brother. I turned the knob and walked out of my room, forgetting it was 3:17. I slithered out of the hallway into the kitchen to get a glass of water. As I walked back to my room, I saw some sort of creature standing in the kitchen. I was so horrified I dropped my glass and couldn't move. It had blood dripping from its bones. It seemed deformed. I squinted, trying to see more of what it looked like, but it then tilted its head and grinned so wide that it isn't even physically possible for a human to do that. It got on all fours and crawled so fucking fast. I bolted into my room and locked the door. I grabbed everything I needed and bolted to the bathroom in my room. I grabbed my cat and locked the door. A few minutes passed, and the door to my room broke, and now it was banging on the bathroom door. I shook in fear, wondering what would happen if it broke the door, but then the banging stopped. I heard a window break, then what sounded like the front door close. It left, and I'm guessing it goes from house to house on the neighborhoods and streets of Los Lunas, New Mexico. I'm now 16, and I never leave my room after 3 a.m. again until I see sunlight. If you are in Los Lunas, New Mexico, I prefer for you to take my advice and never do that. If you do, be prepared to run. This happened back in 2018. I was 24, my sister was 25. We're both native New Yorkers, and there are plenty of stories I have. I think we all know New York is strange. Anyway, we were on a crowded train going to meet up with a friend. There were no seats, so we were holding onto the pole. It's already a tight squeeze, but this man and this girl, who are non-related, get on, and I hold the pole that my sister and I are both holding. We're talking, and I notice the man directly in front of us keeps on looking at us, like really looking. I'm already feeling uncomfortable as it is, and it's hard not to pay attention. I try to ignore it by talking to my sister. By the way, we are nowhere near our destination. A couple of train stops later, he eventually says to us, "Are you guys sisters?" We both look at one another, feeling awkward, and I'm like, "Yeah." At this point, I'm praying that the train would hurry up to the next stop so we can get off. I know my sister is thinking the same. The other girl's looking at us, and she looks uncomfortable. He smiles and seems to get excited, if you know what I mean. He then says to us, "Oh yeah, you guys are sisters," in an incredibly perverted tone. He licks his lips and keeps looking from my sister to me, back and forth. At this point, the girl gives us an awkward smile, and she looks just as terrified as we do. I can tell that the man is getting really excited by the fact that we are sisters, and comments how beautiful we are. My sister looks at me, and we see a stop coming up. We both know it's not our stop, but we're leaving the train. He keeps trying to talk to us, and we keep ignoring him. And as soon as the doors open, we leave the train. Again, I've been in many weird and uncomfortable situations, but the fact that he was literally so close to us with his perverted smile, his excited eyes, and excited you know what, yeah, I'm glad we were able to get away from him safely. Thankfully, he didn't follow us. Thought it would be good to let you know that this takes place in Australia. Years ago, when I was pregnant, we were just getting ready to go to bed, and it was late, about 1:30 a.m. This woman knocked on the door, and my husband answered. She was clearly high and jittery, and looking around everywhere. She asked if she could use the toilet. My husband said no, this is not a public restroom. We both got a really bad vibe of her. She was quite a big woman, and clearly something wasn't right with her. She started to try and open our security door, rattling the handle, but we have always been very cautious of keeping it locked the minute we walk in. My husband told her to go away, and he shut the door. She started to bang on the door, screaming that she needed to use the toilet. My husband opened the door again and told her to piss off, or he was calling the cops. She stopped, froze, and for about 20 seconds stood there, staring at us. And then she turned around and walked away. We turned off all the lights and looked through the blinds, and saw her next door talking to two people. I said to my husband that this was a setup for a home invasion, and he agreed. The thing was, I had actually seen this woman around before quite a few times, so she could have known that I was heavily pregnant, and that would make us a good target, because we would have been compliant. People have a tendency to be more compliant when they're trying to protect their family. I reckon she followed me home. I never saw her again. Here's a little background for this story. I'm an 18-year-old male who lives with my 42-year-old mother in an apartment in Montana. It's a 2-story apartment with 4 sections and only 2 garages, which means 2 sections have to share 1 garage. For the past 3 or 4 years, we've had a mute and deaf neighbor live next to us, and to be honest, he's kind of an asshole. Me and my mother don't know why, but almost every week or so for the past few months, people have been staying at his apartment for about a week, then suddenly leaving. About 3 weeks ago, me and my mom decided that we should contact the landlord after this encounter. 3 weeks ago, I was taking out the trash around 8:45 p.m., and of course it's dark outside. My mom has security cameras panned in our driveway, and for some reason has monitors inside of our garage, which have a live feed on the cameras, which goes 24/7. That day, there was quite a bit of garbage, and living on the 2nd floor, I had to take multiple trips. That day, the garbage was getting picked up, so I had to put the cans in the street. While I took the first bag of garbage down, I noticed the garage door was open, but nobody was inside. I thought it was odd, but chalked it off to be one of the neighbors looking for something. But since it was dark outside and the garage lacked any light from the inside, I couldn't see anything. After bringing down 2 more garbage bags, the garage was still open, but I for sure heard somebody moving in there. When I went up to take the last garbage bag down, I told my mom, and she told me that the landlord has been getting mad about the garage door being left open some nights, and told me to go close it. So after I put the trash bag in the can and walked towards the garage, I hear someone shuffling inside. Now, how our garage is arranged is one side belongs to our neighbors, and the other side belongs to me and my mother. I listened closely and heard the shuffling coming from our side, deep in the garage. The monitor static just made the situation even more eerie. I go to ask if anybody is inside, but nobody answers. I then go to the closest garage door, but as I go to press the button, I hear somebody say, "Don't close it." I'm completely thrown off guard because the neighbors are mute and deaf, so it couldn't possibly be him. I then speed walk away, leaving the garage door open. The question remains, who was that in there, and how did he speak to me if our neighbor only, as far as we know, rents out his room to deaf and mute people? Mind you, our garage door can only be opened with a code, so there's no way somebody can just open our garage door randomly, which would have to mean that the person had to have gotten the code from our neighbor. This is a memory of mine from when I was about 10 years old. I was home alone with my little brother who was 7 years old at the time. We lived in a large house in a nice neighborhood. We're from northeastern Europe. I want to say first that our parents were not home. It was pretty usual that sometimes we would be home alone till midnight, and we enjoyed that since we could be awake for so long. And in our living area, I had never seen anything unusual or scammers. And after this encounter, I'm 22 years old today, I haven't seen anything like this. In my country, it's actually very odd to even see any scammers or people asking for money from strangers anyway. I remember it was a cold winter night, and when you looked outside of the window, you could only see your reflection, that dark. We were chilling with my brother playing PlayStation, when suddenly, I did hear that someone did come in our front porch. I immediately just thought that it was our parents already coming home early, but no one tried to come in. After a couple of minutes, I got a weird feeling and went to check on the porch through the kitchen window. I remember that there was this very old and honestly ugly looking woman. She had hunchback like the hunchback of Notre Dame. She did wear old type of balaclava around her head, and she saw me looking. I started panicking because she didn't even knock the door. She was just standing there. Suddenly she started knocking and hitting the door, and I had to go open it, even if I didn't want to, because we never locked our doors. As I said, usually anything never happens, and you can trust people here not to just walk in your home, and I was scared she would just come in. I was so scared that I did open the door, and she started to show me some papers with text saying something that she can't speak anything, and she needs money for some surgery. She carried some old frames with her that she wanted to sell. I told her I don't have money, and my parents aren't home. Same time I said that, my heart dropped, because now she knows we are alone. She insisted money and showed those same papers over and over. She got closer, and I got a feeling that she was trying to get in. This happened sometime in January, and the only money I did have was $100 bill my dad gave to me on Christmas. I was so scared that I gave away my bill, which I had been asking from my dad for. The woman smiled at me and left. I started crying when I checked the streets from our windows, and I didn't see any car which she would drive. She was walking around in minus 30 degrees. I don't think so. I did run in every room of our house and lock the doors. When I started shutting window blinds around our house, I saw the woman in our backyard. I screamed, closed every window, and called our parents. They came right away and they were furious. Because what kind of scammer is that ruthless? It won't stop even after seeing children are scared. Police came, and they later told us that the neighbor did see a van on the streets, and they tried to find it, but they didn't. We did keep our doors locked after that, and our parents rarely left us alone for a long time. I have read that some people in the neighbor countries did have that scammer culture thing, that they couldn't speak and ask money, but I don't know. I'm still creeped out. I hope she didn't scare other kids that night and hopefully use my money for something reasonable. So I live alone, and I started noticing every morning I've had bites on my arms and legs, and I've posted it on a medical subreddit if you want to actually see it. And I had some people say I did it in my sleep, and to get a camera or something, so I did. The next morning I had no bites, and the camera hadn't picked up anything. But the next morning after that day, I had bites, and I looked at the cameras to see a tall, skinny, what I think was a homeless woman who came in my room and would bite and suck on my fucking arms. I called the police, and it turns out she'd been living in my garage basement for the last few weeks. I never really go down there because there's no point. The lady was arrested. This will be embedded in my head forever, and I don't know if I'm able to sleep anymore. We were on a road trip to Queensland and back. We were in no hurry, so we were taking the scenic route. At one stage, we pulled up at a truck stop on a highway that ran alongside the forest. It was a very isolated place. We were sitting there trying to get my son some snacks and have a break when a UTE pulled up behind us. The guy inside sat there for ages, just staring at us, and I said to my husband, "This guy is creeping me out, let's go." So we started to pack up, and he got out of his UTE. For those unfamiliar with what that is, it's the equivalent to an American pickup truck. He was walking towards us as we got in the car. Before we knew it, he was there and he asked us for a cigarette. My husband said he only smokes rollies and he didn't have one rolled, and the guy said, "I'll wait." He never said more than that in the entire encounter. He leaned in and he stared at me with the creepiest predatory look I've ever seen, and this weird arse grin. The whole time he kept one hand behind him. Suddenly, he went right in the car, and at that moment my 2-year-old said hi. This guy backed away like his arm was on fire. Didn't wait for his cigarette. He just bolted back to his UTE and we took off. We always thought that he had bad intentions and didn't realize we had a kid in the car, and when he did, that threw him maybe. We both agree that this was the creepiest encounter of our lives, and we were pretty sure of his intentions. The really creepy thing is it wasn't until we were driving away that we realized we were in the Belangolo State Forest, where serial killer Ivan Milat had buried all of his victims. There was always a theory that he didn't work alone, and that one of his brothers was involved. Who knows? So this happened when my sister and I were kids, and we went hiking in the woods in our backyard in North Carolina. We only had a few neighbors around us, and our house was surrounded by woods. It was a Saturday afternoon during the summer, and my sister and I decided to go hiking alone together, like we did quite frequently. We were both under the age of 10, but our parents let us go hiking alone. We loved exploring the forest and discovering new places. We made our way through the woods. Everything was fine at first. When we went to our favorite place where we usually hung out, something didn't feel quite right. I felt an uncomfortable feeling, like something was going to happen. I looked around at my surroundings, but I didn't see anything or anyone. My sister and I continued walking through the woods until suddenly we heard leaves crunching behind us and a twig break. So we turned around to see what it was. There was nothing there, so we thought it was just an animal. As we started hiking again, we heard the leaves crunching, and as we turned around, we saw someone run and hide behind a tree. We could see their shadow coming from behind the tree, and it looked like a person. It was definitely not an animal. We both looked at each other and felt paralyzed by fear. We started freaking out and thought this person was going to kidnap us. I grabbed my sister's hand and told her to run. We ran as fast as we could back home. Once we made it home, we ran inside and told our parents. Our parents became worried and told us next time we go hiking, they will come with us, or to not go too far next time. I don't know who was following us, but it still freaks me out to this day. I don't know what they would have done to us if we hadn't run away. I'm a college student in Southern California, and I just had this happen to me just this week. I went to the Target in a town that is like 15 minutes away from my college during my long gap between classes on Tuesday. Right after I went to the bathroom, and I met eyes with some random guy, and I noticed he kept like circling me or purposefully following me around the store. He tried to say something vaguely the 2 times he passed right next to me before I called my partner to be busy, so maybe he would leave me alone. He didn't even stop following me around Target. He even acted like he was shopping and had his phone out. It was obvious he wasn't actually shopping. When I looked through the woman's clothing, he vaguely tried to give me a description of what he was looking for. When I hadn't seen him for a bit, I ditched my cart and hightailed it out of the store. He followed me out of Target too. I looked for the Target security guard on my way out of the store, but there wasn't one. So when I exited after, I waited to let him pass me. He pretended to go to other stores, but kept looking back at me. I ducked behind the cars to make sure he didn't see which car I got into. I also freaked out, because I feel like when there was a Target employee for me to try to get some help, he'd cut me off and talk to them. It was super creepy, and I'm pretty freaked out. Please keep your wits about you. So one night, me and my friends were playing some hide and seek in our hometown. We were probably like 13 at the time. So I went into a small area that is basically like a shortcut from the main road to the side road. I, unfortunately, went alone, and I didn't even think of what can happen. Remember, we were only 13 at the time, and we didn't bring phones with us, so if something happened to us, nobody would even know. So the game started, and I ran sprinting to the woods area. First 30 seconds was a good disclaimer. We have a rule that we have to come to the checkpoint where we start, and we have to save ourselves from not getting picked to search. After around 1 minute, I start hearing footsteps. I say, "Hello? Are you one of my friends?" And something that was there didn't say anything, so I started backing out. Fortunately, the woods area has a main route and 2 side ones, so I could have run either way. I start backing out, and from nowhere, this man just appears from the woods and starts sprinting at me while saying, "I'm gonna get you," in a creepy and eerie way, like a kidnapper. Fortunately, I train football, or soccer in some countries, so I knew I can definitely outrun him, or at least make him tired. I sprint all my way through the woods, with only light being the moonlight, and after around 2 minutes, he gave up. I continued sprinting and got myself all the way to the checkpoint and told all of my friends what had just happened. Of course, no one believed me, but I didn't care since I knew it was real. To this day, I still don't know who or what had tried to catch me that night, but for sure I know, if I wasn't a sports guy, the outcome would be very, very different.